Story 1: The Fake Ranger. I clearly remember the anticipation as I drove to the national park that Friday morning. I craved the solitude of the trails, the whispering breeze, and the towering trees arching over me like guardians of the wilderness. I had everything I needed packed: my tent, camping gear, and a sense of serenity waiting to be awakened by nature's embrace. The isolation was a welcome contrast to the intangible noise of my everyday life. As I breathed in the early autumn air, I set up my camp, looking forward to 2 unmarred nights under the stars, nestled in the remote echoes of the unspoiled landscape. As dusk began to wrap its cool arms around the campsite, a figure approached, silhouetted against the molten horizon. He wore a park ranger uniform, which immediately gave me a sense of reassurance. He had an air of authority mixed with the practiced friendliness of someone used to dealing with visitors. He explained he was doing his usual rounds, ensuring all was well with the campers. Eager to comply, I showed him my permit and engaged in light conversation. However, his questions about how long I intended to stay and whether I was camping alone seemed unusually probing. Yet, his mild demeanor masked any overt intrusiveness, and I dismissed the prickle of discomfort that tickled the back of my neck. The first night in the forest was both peaceful and fraught with unease. Perhaps I was more affected by his unexpected visit than I wanted to admit. As I lay cocooned in my sleeping bag, I heard footsteps outside my tent. At first, I thought it was just an animal, but the distinct rhythm matched that of a human, deliberate and cautious. The beam of a flashlight danced past the fabric walls, and I held my breath, waiting for an explanation that never came. The forest, which had seemed so welcoming during daylight, now felt like a stage with unseen actors. My heart danced a nervous jig as I lay there, a captive audience to the nocturnal performance. Morning greeted me with golden rays spilling through the leaves, but my sleep had been shallow and restless. Emerging from the tent, I was struck by the subtle disarray of my belongings. A pack of provisions, once neatly secured, lay ajar as if examined by curious hands. Most unnerving were the boot prints in the soft earth, each distinct tread a stark reminder of the presence that had whispered around me in the night. As I followed the trail of prints with my eyes, trying to calm the rising edge of panic, I heard a hail. The ranger appeared once more, as if summoned by my thoughts. He seemed concerned, talking about an impending storm and advising that I relocate my camp to a more shielded area he could guide me to. His persistent offer, presented as though it was for my protection, only stoked the embers of suspicion sparked the evening prior. Despite his outward cordiality, something inside recoiled against his suggestion. His presence, like a shadow creeping into twilight, turned an innocent suggestion into an offer laden with unknown intent. The unease churned into decision. I muttered my thanks and declined, opting instead for a more definitive course of action: to pack and leave. Hiking back to the entrance, each step was a mix of relief and dismay. I rehearsed in my mind how I would present the incidents to park authorities. Each step, crunching over leaves, felt like a countdown to revelation. At the reception, under the fluorescent glare of the overhead lights, I shared my encounter with the ranger. The atmosphere shifted palpably when I described him. A spreading gravity marked on the receptionist's face. She listened intently before calmly asserting that no ranger had been patrolling the area, nor was anyone matching his description associated with the park. her words were like a cipher, unlocking the truth behind my disturbed instincts. The shock reverberated through me, a chilling realization of how narrowly I escaped the unknown. I hurried to my car, feeling the oppressive weight of vulnerability. As I drove away, the picturesque rustic road stretched on, laden now with an atmosphere that felt more hostile than delightful. Each tree, rock, and shadows morphed into potential avenues of menace outside the safety of my headlights. Once breathtaking views now loomed ominous, each reflecting my own relieved disbelief. How easily a landscape could transform with the knowledge of an unseen stalker operating within its bounds. In the months that followed, flashbulb moments of the incident haunted me, replaying like a grim movie I couldn't switch off. I oscillated between audiences of friends and faceless detectives, narrating the ordeal each time with a little less hesitancy. Friends gasped sympathetically at the right moments, their concern like steady anchors tethering me back to safety. Yet none fully grasped the depth of my fright. Alone in bed at night, I would close my eyes tightly against visions of dark uniforms and trailing shadows, wondering ceaselessly what lingered at the end of that benign invitation. What intentions lay crouched in the silence between his words? Somehow just imagining a different decision, of not trusting my instincts, left me with a gratitude tinged with an eternal vigilance. Story 2, No Way Out. The morning was perfect for a hike. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, casting a gentle light over the trailhead as my friend Dave and I made our way down the narrow dirt road to the small parking area. Surrounded by dense trees, ours was the only car visible when we arrived, and the place felt utterly remote. This was what we loved: fresh air, solitude, and the promise of adventure. After a quick check of our gear, we set off along the trail, eager to make the most of the day. As the hours passed, we found ourselves enveloped in the beauty and silence of nature, losing track of time and space as we trudged deeper into the forest. The trail was challenging yet rewarding, and with each step, we felt a sense of growing accomplishment. By the time we decided to head back, our legs were tired, but our spirits high. We retraced our path, keenly aware of the lengthening shadows as dusk approached. It was that peaceful time of day when the world feels still, and the wilderness seems to draw a deep breath in the gathering dark. The serenity shattered the moment we returned to the parking lot. Replacing our car's backdrop of serene wilderness was an old rusted truck parked directly behind it. The truck's windows were inexplicably dark, and there were no license plates to identify it. My heart sank immediately. The truck blocked us in completely, leaving no room to maneuver around or escape. Worse, one glance at my phone confirmed what I feared. No reception. Eyes scanning the silent lot, I called out for any sign of the truck's owner, but only the echo of my voice answered. Inspecting our car, I felt a chill creep up my spine as I noticed a detail that made my blood turn to ice. A door that should have been securely locked was slightly ajar. More than that, the things inside, our backpacks, water bottles, and quirkily festooned hats, were not as we had left them. They had been moved, rifled through. I exchanged a nervous glance with Dave, who wore an expression mirroring my own. Fear mingled with a rising urgency. We stood there, twin statues framed by an encroaching night that seemed darker by the second. Suddenly, the sound of fast, heavy footsteps came from the woods, pulling our attention violently toward the trees. They moved quickly, deliberate in their tempo, reverberating through the green cathedral like spectral drum beats. Then, a sharp whistle cut through the air, echoing ominously before leaving a jarring stillness. We stood tense, bodies rigid against uncertainty, breaths shallow and fast. There were no visible figures, just this unsettling invitation hanging in the air like a whisper, daring us to investigate. Minutes ticked by as we agonized over our predicament, each second intensifying the oppressive weight of our isolation. Relief came abruptly as distant headlights poked through the branches lining the dirt road. A police car rolled in, its approach like a lifeline thrown to drowning men. The officer explained that a passerby had reported the suspicious truck earlier. He sympathized with our situation and squared his shoulders, ready to search the area for any signs of the unknown lurker inhabiting our nightmare. Together, we watched as the officer methodically swept the nearby area, though his search returned void of discovery. The utter emptiness of the thicket, mocking in its silence, offered no further clues. Realizing that we were effectively trapped, the officer radioed in for a tow truck, understanding the urgency of freeing us from this bizarre entrapment. When the tow truck arrived, the truck was dragged away with a guttural complaint of metal, its mystery intact, ownerless, and unseen. As we finally drove away from the parking area, the headlights carving a path through the still dark forest, I was consumed by a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. A shadow seemed to loom within the rearview mirror, a phantom that dissolved only as the dense woodland receded behind us, swallowed by distance and time. Dave and I agreed that this experience, surreal and alarming, marked an unspoken boundary, one that warned against wandering into seclusion with only silence as our companion. It was an adventure that left us deeply shaken, a psychological scar translating to a promise: never again alone in the wild. Story 3, Off the Trail. The morning was ideal for hiking. The sky stretched clear above us, and the air was crisp as my friend Jake and I set off into the woods. We were excited to try the new trail we discovered on an app last night, anticipating a journey filled with beautiful river views and solitude. I felt prepared with the map downloaded for offline use, certain this remote path would offer us the respite from the bustling tourist routes that we both craved. As we delved deeper into the trail, however, the path became trickier to discern. Sparse markers adorned the trail, seeming oddly out of place with their fresh paint and unfamiliar insignias. A prickling sense of doubt began to creep into my mind. Was this really an official trail? But we shrugged it off, overly eager to lose ourselves in nature's pristine embrace and wanting to trust the app that led us here. Hours passed without any sign of other hikers, and our conversations filled the quiet void left by the rustling trees. Just as our optimism started to wane, a figure appeared on the path ahead. Barefoot, muddy, and oddly dressed, he moved with an unsettling swiftness towards us before slowing to match our pace. His disheveled appearance made me pause internally, but his friendly demeanor was disarming. When we questioned if we were on the right route, he grinned, revealing teeth stained from years of neglect. He assured us with an overly genial tone that we were following the correct trail, advising us to stick close to the river that ran beside us. Every instinct screamed at me to be wary, but in the moment, we were just relieved to have confirmation of our path, or so we thought. Not long after he left us, We stumbled upon the sight that made my blood run cold. Just off the trail lay a half-buried pile of clothes and a torn backpack, the scene speaking of urgency and fear. The sense of dread, previously suppressed, surged anew. I could see Jake's face mirror my own apprehension. And without exchanging words, we knew we had to abandon this path immediately. We decided to veer off the marked route, aiming to climb an incline that seemed to promise a shortcut back to sensible terrain. But the deeper we went, the more oppressive the forest became, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The sense of being watched followed us like a shadow, every crack in the underbrush behind us hinting at an unwanted pursuit. With every step, my anxiety swelled, panic simmering beneath the surface as we fought against the thickening wilderness. Just when despair began to claw at our spirits, we stumbled onto a service road, a tangible lifeline that gleamed like salvation under the midday sun. Breathless, we waved down the first vehicle that passed, scrambling for safety inside the car and leaving the eerie silence of the woods behind. The ride back to town was quiet, the driver respectful of our shaking nerves. Jake and I left the experience with an unspoken understanding, a bond forged in fear. We never returned to that trail, choosing instead to remember it for what it was. A stark reminder of the unpredictability of both nature and the human mind. In hushed voices over coffee and nerves, we found solace in being able to wonder, or perhaps fear, what might have happened if we hadn't escaped just in time.